welcome to this episode of People Are Animals Too, Darn It. I'm your host, Mandy Evans, and joining me today I have Todd Cramer and Heather Schechter. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about themselves. Heather, do you want to go ahead, start?
Sure. I am the Director of Marketing and Business Development for a company called Sunrise Management and Consulting. We're based in the Albany area of New York, and we manage apartment communities. We have about 1,500 units in the capital region, and we have some apartment communities that, thanks to Todd and the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society's help, we learned about the Pets Are Welcome designation from the Humane Society of the United States, and they helped teach us about how we could allow pets at our apartment communities, and especially dogs with no breed, age, or weight restrictions. So Todd,
that's awesome.
You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Todd Cramer. I'm the former president and CEO of the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society in the capital region of New York. And I've spent about 18 years of my life working in animal welfare, both at the ASPCA, PetSmart, Charities, some local shelters. And I was privileged to lead the Pets Are Welcome pilot program at St. Hubert's Animal Welfare Center in Madison, New Jersey. And when I moved up here to Albany, New York and became the CEO, Heather had reached out because they were designing Van Allen apartments and they wanted to allow pets and wanted to know how best to do that. And I basically said, well, being pet friendly isn't good enough. You have to be Pets Are Welcome. You have to make it truly welcoming. And I think Heather and her team just lit up at that idea and wanted to know more. And that really spawned a beautiful partnership. And Heather, I think you've expanded since then, correct?
We have. We've rolled that out to several of our new apartment communities. So it's very exciting. For the relationship for us was, Todd had a ton of research that he could share with us that really helped guide the protocols we used on which pets to accept at our properties and the meet and greet protocols. So it's not that we were just opening it up to anyone. We just weren't limiting it based on breed or size. We were limiting it based on how socialized the pet was and how the pet could interact with people and other animals. So we learned to do a meet and greet protocol with prospective renters and their pets so that we could interview them and find out if they'd be a good fit. We did find we have, pit bulls, we have all breeds of dogs, and many of them are great residents. And then we've interviewed little dogs, and some of them aren't great residents. So he had the research to back it up and also gave us the tools we needed to screen to have the right animals at our communities.
So let's start from the very beginning, because I think that there are so many, I can't think of it, landlords, we'll say, property management companies that really think the easiest thing to do is just to not allow pets. So I'm super interested, what spurred the desire to even reach out to Todd to start welcoming pets, Heather?
Well, living in our area, there are a lot of people who really love their pets and, treat them very well and make great renters. So we knew that there was a demand for it out there. It's something that we've been asked many times. And the particular property that we had under development, we actually had room for dog parks. And we thought, let's really allow people to be there with their dogs, and how do we make that work? So in the past, we had a list given to us years before from a veterinarian that basically said, these are the breeds of dogs you should exclude from your communities. So we knew we wanted to have dogs, but we also had the list of the dogs that we were supposed to exclude. And I remember emailing that to Todd, and he said that that was very outdated philosophy.
It makes me cringe. Todd, do you want to share how you felt about that first conversation?
Well, I was thrilled because when we first worked on this pilot in New Jersey, we weren't making a lot of progress. And one of the things we learned right out of the gate was that the property managers weren't the decision makers. They couldn't change policy. They could influence it, but they couldn't change it. And because occupancy rates were very good, there was no incentive for those complexes and those developers to really do this. So when Heather called and said, hey, we'd like some guidance on, how we do this. Do we allow pets only in some buildings? Do we intermix them? How do we make that happen? I just seized the opportunity to have the conversation and form the relationship. And I think from a shelter point of view, there's a couple of things you need to do before even having those conversations. The first is to know what you can offer. Know what you can offer for support to any landlord, property management company that wants to have pets there, and just be sure you can deliver on that. And I think you have to look for the opportunities and then seize those in the moment.
So Heather, just to ask you or Todd, what are the resources and things that shelters can offer that are a benefit to property managers?
So, and actually the point he just made about engaging senior management. So I'm the marketing director, and we came to meet with Todd, and we brought our senior management team. So the owner of our company, Jesse Holland, the vice president, the regional manager, and we could really get all of our questions out. So that first opportunity of having the resource of someone so knowledgeable who had a lot of data to back it up. So he had lots of handouts for us to take a look at afterwards. And he even had other apartment communities who were designated Pets Are Welcome. He connected us with people who could put us in touch with them, and we could find out about their best practices and how they made this a reality. We still work with the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society on ongoing educational development for our apartment community staff. So from our maintenance team to our property managers, because when we have new employees come on, they also need to be able to understand the philosophy and to do the meet and greet. So one of the big resources is education.
Yeah, and that works on both sides. I think, as a CEO, I knew what we had for a budget, and I knew what programs we ran and where this would fit in. But you have to include your line staff, ideally your volunteers and your management team, because they really know if they can deliver on it or not and what the hiccups would be. And so some of the resources that we wanted to offer, with the idea being, if we wanted this to happen, and I really wanted Sunrise Management to be an example for others. I wanted to show that it could work so that others would follow their lead, and then build a relationship directly with Heather and her team and work with them going forward. And so the first piece was we needed to make it easy for them to partner with us. And so it's kind of sales 101 if you've ever done sales. What would the pain be in this for Sunrise Management, and how could we alleviate that pain? So we offered training 101 for their staff, especially what to do in a dangerous situation. Say the maintenance team goes in to do maintenance on an apartment, the dog is protecting the space and is loose. How do they keep themselves safe, and what do they do? What if there are issues between residents over pets? Can we mitigate that for them and work on that and come up with a solution within our purview? If it's a poorly trained dog, can we offer training? And then we could also offer a new resident orientation, proper animal handling, courtesy when you're walking on a trail or using the dog park. And then the other thing that we did, and during my time there, I don't think we ever had a need to use this, but we gave management staff at Sunrise Management precedence in terms of reaching out to our leadership team and 24-hour contact. So they had somebody that they could call and get through to should they have a problem and need it resolved.
There's someone who's in the role of Director of Animal Behavior and Development. Her name is Nancy Haynes. And she's been able to invite our staff in to whenever we needed it, usually on maybe every half year or so, we'd have enough new staff that it was worth doing another training. And she'd actually have us interact with animals at the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society. and learn how to go over and approach an animal safely. So you're not going in, you're not going for the face, you know, to teach us, because if we're the first ones, we're the first line in there, and we need to know how to approach an animal. I personally don't have any pets, so for me it was really a learning experience, and you know, what signs to look for, whether a pet would be a good fit for our properties or not. So I think that educational piece was key, and they had the resources to allow us to come in and actually see how to interact with animals and practice. She'd bring us all up to come and pet a dog. So it was great. We're actually doing it for the first time tomorrow over Zoom. So we're going to see how that goes, because we can't bring all our staff together in a small room like we used to.
And the other resource that I think shelters have to offer as an incentive, and I'll say, you know, it really didn't seem all that important to you, Heather, but it was certainly valuable, was media, press attention, your social media accounts, because they're getting good exposure for doing the right thing and doing it well. And it also, you know, drives people to want to rent from their communities and live there.
Yeah, almost a press conference together, and we did it at we have a local baseball program that has a Bark in the Park day where they allow dogs. So we tied that all together with a sponsorship, and it was a really good time to promote what we were doing and what the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society was doing at the time. So it's definitely a good opportunity there.
So I just keep thinking about, I have this really crazy idea that no one that I know of has done, is that there should be, you know, there's senior housing or what is that called? Senior care centers.
Living.
Yeah. I think there needs to be, like, when you're in your 30s and you have family, that should be housing, because then you don't have to cook there. You just go down to the restaurant. Your kids could be in crafting classes, doing athletics. I think it's an open market, that, just saying. But what I see here is that you've really taken kind of that specialized approach and made yourselves this really amazing pet-friendly environment. And considering that the majority of available housing is not pet-friendly, what do you feel like people, property managers, are missing out on?
In our area, there's a lot of pet-friendly housing, but there's a lot of restrictions. So when one of our first actually interviews, and Todd was there, we had one of our residents who was a teacher who had been commuting 40 minutes each way to work because she had this well-trained pit bull, but none of the apartment communities in our area would even talk to her about, you know, meeting her dog, nothing. So she was just excluded from apartment housing because of her dog. And, you know, she had started training classes when he was just a puppy, and it was really exciting for her to get to meet other people who face the same circumstances. We found that we have a very close-knit community of renters at Van Allen, people who meet up on the dog park and who spend a lot of time together. And so it's been interesting, because when we've had media interviews, they'll say, oh, let me bring my friends and their dogs too, because they're so excited to have that community together. And there are times where we have had to call the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society, because there's times where we've had two renters who both have well-behaved pets, but they didn't seem to like each other. And they were able to help us mediate that.
Well, and that's the other benefit to doing this, I think, that sometimes we miss, is that, you know, if you work in animal welfare and you have a pet, you know their value to you as an individual. They keep us healthy, they help us stay calm, they help us build relationships. I really think that when you have that many people living in a limited space, tension can run high. And I think the pets oftentimes help mitigate that. And people have something in common. I mean, if you just go to your local dog park, you can see the bond that people form with each other. And I think that's the other side benefit to this. And this also doesn't extend, you know, just to the larger corporate-owned rental units either. This extends out to the individual property owners I was a landlord once. I had a 2-family home. I moved out of my apartment to move out of state. I was renting it, and I was wrestling with the decision to allow pets or which pets, and I was in conflict because I did work in animal welfare and I knew the importance of it. And I worked around that. And what I decided to do was not only allow the pet, but if you wanted to adopt one, I would pay the adoption fee. I kept the deposits reasonable because I recognized that any damage that truly was done was probably not going to be covered fully by the smaller deposit that I could charge. And so we did something else instead. My tenants and I agreed that, I could do my quarterly checks or check sooner if I wanted to with some notice and just take a look around, and that they needed to reach out and ask me for support because I had those resources. And what I found in the end was that the pets were fantastic tenants. My tenants did the damage. My tenants cost me the money. It wasn't the pets.
So this reminds me a lot of just in animal welfare, that we are constantly putting ourselves in a position of us versus them, and constantly trying to identify the bad guy and what can we do to prevent the bad guy. And what you are talking about really is taking this broader approach to just in housing, where you say, not only am I going to believe in you, I'm going to support you. And the benefit of that, of creating this community, because whether people like it or not, people love their pets, and they're going to make decisions that are based on what's best for their pets. Like you said, Heather, the woman driving 40 minutes to work, it's because that dog meant everything to her. So I think it's our lives, everything right now is so caught up in trying to play police and identify the bad guy that we really miss the opportunity to come together as a community. And I'm wondering, Heather, do you see higher retention in those communities where you are pet friendly?
I think so. I mean, we have great retention overall, but I think so. I think that people are really, they form a community, not just with their neighbors, but their pets form a community. So there's even more reasons to stay together.
It's funny because that is so true. We put in a dog park, and we've actually had people that communicate with each other on behalf of their pets. Like, Brutus really misses you, Mrs. Buster. We got to get Brutus and Buster together. And it's not about the people at all. It's this connection that these animals make with each other. Well, this is really great and so interesting. And I really feel like you guys should write a book or have your own TV show, because more people have to know about this. The pets are welcome with the Humane Society. Is that still an active tool available through HSUS?
The literature is there. I'm not sure if the Humane Society is still promoting it, but the literature is there. And we do have some of it posted on our website. We have an article that Todd wrote that was very informative for Pet Sheltering magazine. So
yeah, my understanding was that it's a program that the Humane Society of the United States isn't promoting or actively working on, but they do have the resources there. But this work, it really happens at the ground level. It really happens at your level, Mandy. And this is something that, that you can do and you can make happen. And there's, lots of folks out there to help do that. And the other thing with this is it falls perfectly in line with our efforts in animal welfare to offer pet retention programs. So the whole idea is to keep the pet out of the shelter at all costs, keep it in a home where it's already loved so it can avoid all of that change. And you do that by providing all the other services we offer, the training support, the pet food pantries, the low-cost spay and neuter. It falls right in line with that. So it's a logical thing to do.
We recently had somebody contact us. It was an elderly gentleman, and he was crying on the phone, which I know this is not fair to say, but when a man cries, I have a really hard time with that. I don't know why. And he was so, please don't, yeah. So he was really sad because he was going to have to leave his housing because his cats weren't vaccinated and I think maybe not fixed. But we were able to work with him and get him up to date and vaccinated so he could keep his pets. But I think that his landlord told him to call us. So that's an opportunity for us to build that relationship, because that's what we're here for. And the more the people know that we're here as a resource, the better. So building these relationships. And to be honest, I think most people look at property managers or landlords as the bad guy. Even throughout this whole discussion around eviction, it's all about the tenant and that the tenant's going to be evicted. And I keep thinking, but what about the company or the landlord that needs the money in order to survive? And actually, Heather, right now with the eviction moratorium and everything happening, as a property manager, how is that affecting you guys?
Well, we live in New York, or our apartment communities are all in New York, where there's also, there's programs by New York State available for renters. So we've been sending that out to our residents in case they have need of it, and really working with them closely to help them through this time. One of the things you mentioned, the person who called you, we have a 55 plus community in Ballston Spa, which is near Saratoga in New York, and we actually have that one is Pets Are Welcome. It's called Carlton Hollow Apartments. And I think for that, that type of community, it's very rare. And at every age, people love their pets. So we're finding great success with it at our 55 plus community too.
That's great. That's when all the kids have left home and left their parents behind and they need the pet.
But especially during this time, during COVID-19, I think people have had even greater appreciation for adopting pets. From, I think, our local shelters, a lot of them really just, everyone got adopted. So it was a good time for that, an important time to do a lot of education around it so that people know how to, train their animal at home, because they may not go to the puppy training classes that they're used to. Right. So we actually had a webinar for our residents with Nancy Haynes of the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society on pet behavior.
And I want to go back to what you had said, we started to talk about earlier about screening folks and the conversation about really trusting people, because this also fits into open adoptions or trust-based adoptions. So and the theory behind that is, one, you meet people where they are, and you understand that lots of folks do have pet experience. We make the assumption first, oftentimes, that folks are not good pet guardians. They just don't know everything we know because we've worked in this industry a long time and we've seen everything. When in fact they know quite a bit, and we have to trust that. And imagine we're out there constantly pushing pet adoption. Right? We're saying adopt, adopt, adopt. Don't breed, don't buy from a pet store, don't even get a puppy from a litter that your neighbor has. Even if puppies aren't available in your area because they're in short supply, adopt. And then you adopt, you do the right thing, you try to do the right thing, and then you're looking for housing and we're putting you through the ringer. We're judging you and that pet without even knowing who you are, without asking any questions to discover what that's like. And then when we decide it's not a fit, we're potentially breaking up your pet family and putting everybody through unnecessary change, when if we put that same energy into the resources and education and just listening, we can make a difference. And when you're successful, like Sunrise Management has been, it does trickle down. And I have a great story on that, is that we had, during my time at the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society, we had a family that very clearly loved their dogs, and they had kind of a catastrophe that left their home uninhabitable. And they had to move in with a family member, and they just couldn't have the pet. And they're looking for resources. And so ultimately, rental units weren't panning out for them. They surrendered the pet, and I agreed that we would hold those pets. And we couldn't always do that for everybody, but just because you have a policy doesn't mean you can't bend it a little bit when it makes sense to do so. So ultimately, I received a call from a potential landlord who wanted to talk to me directly about this family and their pets, and just kind of talk it through. And And that landlord was one of Sunrise Management's employees whose mom had rental property and they had never allowed pets before. And he said that they were going to do it because of what you were doing, Heather, at Sunrise Management. He saw it working and it felt good. And then my job at that point was to say, no worries, whatever resources this family needs, I'm going to offer them. And if ultimately it's just not working out, there'll be a place for that pet to go so that you don't have to feel guilty about that. And it worked famously.
That's awesome. Just on a broader scope of just the world right now, because media, I think, gets everybody worked up thinking that the majority of people are bad and people are good. And what you see right now, especially, there's a lot of talk about open adoptions. Right now that's coming to light, just being friendly to the community. And you find that there are people, and I'm one of them, that jump on this soapbox and just want everybody to know, like, this is amazing. And, you know, we have the home to home program where we just trust our community to rehome their pets on their own, and we provide them with the support to do it. And what happens is that you experience what that good feels like, what that success feels like, and you want everyone to feel that, because there's so much compassion fatigue and negativity that happens within our world that when you experience it, it's wonderful. And it's so sad that it takes so much effort to get people to move away from this negative kind of punitive mindset and go towards really what Heather is saying is this community. Anytime that we put out anything negative or that's fear-based, like if your dog, you know, barks once, you're out, it becomes very transactional. And what you're doing is you're saying, this isn't a transaction. This is your family and we're supporting you. And that policy and the way that it forms true relationships where you start to build trusting, honest, wonderful relationships with people. And we miss the boat so often on that. It's sad, and it just makes me so happy to hear what you guys have done. And Heather, what you're continuing to do, I think that you're an example that everyone should be listening to throughout the country. Like, I want you on the news every night so that landlords can hear, and property management can hear that you're great success and that you can partner with a local shelter to be able to help you accomplish those goals.
We have some great stories on our website. We have a blog at sunrisemc.com, and there's definitely, you know, a lot of resources on there about how we've done Pets Are Welcome, about our community, you know, interviews. And when we were first starting this up, we had a local person who did dog training who contributed articles to it. So there's a lot of information out there. And then I believe that the Humane Society of the United States still has an active Pets Are Welcome website. At least they did when we were first looking for all this information. And that also had some great resources.
Great. So just to wrap up for today, let's talk a little bit and I know that Heather just gave some really great resources. Thank you for that. So it was sunrisemc.com. Okay. Todd, do you have any final words, tips, suggestions, or resources that people in animal welfare can use?
Yeah, I think keep an open mind. And I mean, with any of the programs we run in a shelter, you know, because of the nature of the work and how busy we get, it's easy to say no, or we can't. And the question really should be, how can we? And what would it take? And you can implement pieces of this in smaller stages. You don't have to do it all at once. And if you are in animal sheltering, then you're probably connected. And if you're not, you should be, to the Association of Animal Welfare Administrators, because they have that listserv in the group where you can ask your questions and see what others are doing and not reinvent the wheel, even get materials from them so that it actually becomes even easier.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and they have a really great Facebook page that's super active where you can communicate with your fellow.
Yeah, and then the only other piece to this too, especially with the potential for, you know, such an increase in evictions, is that for folks, well, all of us should have a plan for our pets anyway, right? You know, it's just me here. I have 5 pets. I know what happens to them if something happens to me. and we should all try to have that plan. But we should also plan for what if I were to lose my home or be evicted, and work on that ahead of time. If you know you don't have the resources, don't wait till the day before you're moving and go to the shelter with your pet and expect them to take them. I know that, folks that really want to keep them in their home as long as they can. I know that they really don't want to take them to the shelter, but oftentimes it's too late for that shelter to have space to take the pet in. Many are doing intake by appointment. So just really try to plan ahead and be very active in looking at the resources like you have on how to rehome your own pet.
Yeah, and just a comment on that I've talked to shelters before who were contacting us about utilizing home to home. And I would say, well, and it's not always, I don't want to be like, I'm contributing to the negativity. They just come and dump their animals, and that's, they never have a plan and they just dump the animals. I'm like, okay, but what are you telling people to do? What is the information on your website that prepares them and allows them to know, these are the steps you need to take before you surrender to the shelter? And she said, nothing, because we're discouraging surrenders, so we don't tell anybody anything. We don't even tell them we take owner surrenders. I'm like, okay, so sometimes that isn't the best approach, that by educating, informing, providing resources, and really giving people the tools and the trust that they can help themselves, is all people, that's what they need. They just need someone that tells them what they need to do. So I appreciate both of you immensely for coming on and talking today and taking time out of your day. One of these days, I look forward to meeting you.
Here, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
You are welcome.
And thank you, Todd. Todd, thank you for inviting us, and for the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society really providing us with so many resources so we could make this successful for our company. We've really appreciated their partnership for about 4 years now.
Partnership, it's the key word that you guys that's really good to consider. It's not an us and it's a them, it's doing it together. Well, you're listening to People Are Animals Too, Darn It. I'm your host, Mandy Evans, and I appreciate that you took the time to listen. Thank you.